This video shows you how to deploy dashDB local on Microsoft Azure. The first step is to create a resource group in Azure. A resource group is basically a container that holds all the related resources together for an Azure solution. Common resources like virtual machine, storage account, virtual network, and so on. The main advantage to a resource group is that you can deploy, manage, and monitor all the resources for your solution as a group, rather than handling these resources individually. Next, create a virtual network. The Azure Virtual Network Service enables you to securely connect Azure resources to each other with virtual networks. And specify the existing resource group you created earlier. The next step is to create a storage account. An Azure storage account provides a unique namespace to store and access Azure storage data objects. And specify the existing resource group you created earlier. Next, create one virtual machine for each node. You must have one head node and at least 2 data nodes. Base the size of each virtual machine on the information in the Hardware Prerequisites section in the dashDB local prerequisites. Use the SSH public key from your dashDB local installation. And specify the existing resource group you created earlier. Be sure to create a network security group during this step. Repeat this process to create a second virtual machine for one of the data nodes. We're going to fast forward a bit and take a look at the status of the virtual machines. And also look at the network security group. The notifications panel indicates that the deployments have started. And repeat the process one more time to create a third virtual machine for the second data node. And again, fast forwarding a bit, you can see that there are 3 configured VMs. Before moving on, change the IP address assignment from dynamic to static for each of the 3 virtual machines. Now that the head node IP address is set, we'll fast forward past the other 2 nodes and verify that you can connect to all 3 IP addresses. Next, add an inbound security rule to the network security group to allow HTTPS access. dashDB local requires the root system to be at least 100 GB in size. By default, on Azure's VM, it's 30 GB. To resize the OS disk space, first stop the VM. Then change the OS disk space to 300 GB. And then restart the VM. Next, log into the VM. Then run fdisk at the command line to see the current size of the disk. Now run fdisk again to resize the partition on the VM. Restart the VM. Here you can see that the new partition, SDA3, was created. Next, create a directory for the dashDB local cluster file system. This command formats the partition. You can see that it allocates the group tables, writes the inode tables, creates the journal, and finally writes superblocks and file system account information. Next, mount the cluster file system on the partition and verify that it was successful. Now you're ready to deploy dashDB local onto the new systems. First, edit the local hosts file on each VM to specify the IP address and host names for each virtual machine. Next, you will manually run each of these commands to mount the NFS file system. and then perform the same steps on the other two VMs. Next, create a nodes file specifying the host names and IP addresses for the head node and the two data nodes. Now execute Docker run on all three nodes. And start dashDB on the head node. Again, we'll fast forward a bit to see that dashDB was successfully deployed. When that's done, copy the URL and load the dashDB local console. Log in using the blue admin username and password. Find more learning resources in the dashDB Learning Center.